The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy simultaneously. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species stopped their work to listen as Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective spoke words that would change everything. Brothers and sisters of all species, his voice carried across the quantum channels. For 3,000 years we have served the Krillian Empire in fear. We believed they were too powerful to resist. The humans have shown us that this is a lie. On the water world of Aquatica, the Cerulean resistance leader Fluxara gathered her people around hidden transmitters. The aquatic aliens had been forced to harvest rare minerals from their ocean floors for centuries. Today we join the humans in their fight for freedom, Fluxara declared. If one small species can stand against the Empire, then all of us together can tear it down. Emperor Zekthor watched the rebellion spread across his empire from his throne room. Red warning lights flashed on displays showing uprisings on over 200 worlds. His 3,000-year reign was collapsing in a matter of days. "My Emperor," General Crixnall said urgently, "we must respond to these rebellions immediately, or we will lose control completely." Zekthor's yellow eyes blazed with fury. "If I cannot rule the galaxy, then no one will. Activate the planet killer. Fleet. We will destroy every rebellious world, starting with Earth." Admiral Bennett received the intelligence report while coordinating strikes from her hidden base in the Horsehead Nebula. Her face went pale as she read the details. "They're going to destroy entire planets," she told Captain Brooks. "Intelligence says they have 50 planet-killer ships moving toward Earth." Brooks studied the tactical display. "How long do we have?" 6 days. Maybe 7. Those ships are heavily armored and escorted by the remainder of their main fleet. Dr. Wright appeared on the communication screen from her research station. "Admiral, I have something that might help. Project Achilles is ready." "What's Project Achilles?" Bennett asked. Wright smiled grimly. "Something we've been building in secret for the past 6 months, hidden bases surrounding Krillian Prime itself." The revelation stunned everyone in the command center. While the Empire had been hunting human forces throughout the galaxy, Dr. Wright's teams had been secretly building attack bases in the enemy's home system. "How many ships?" Bennett asked. 200 ghost ships, fully armed and ready. Plus we have allies now. The allies were the key to everything. The Zephyrian Collective had shared their advanced biotechnology with human forces. Their living ships could heal damage and adapt to enemy weapons in real time. The Ceruleans contributed their knowledge of quantum manipulation, allowing human ships to phase in and out of normal space. Combined with human stealth technology, these hybrid vessels were nearly unstoppable. Even the crystalline prism entities from the core worlds had joined the alliance. Their ships could split into hundreds of fragments, each one a deadly weapon that could strike independently. Captain Helen Davis now commanded a mixed squadron of human, Zephyrian, and Cerulean vessels. "It's strange fighting alongside former enemies," she told her crew as they prepared for the final battle. "They were never our enemies," replied her tactical officer. "They were slaves just like we would have been." On Krillian Prime, Emperor Zekthor prepared his final gambit. The planet-killer fleet would destroy Earth and end human resistance once and for all. Then he would systematically exterminate every rebellious species in the galaxy. But as his ships began their journey toward Earth, alarms suddenly blared throughout the capital. Impossible energy readings appeared on sensors all around Krillian Prime. "What is happening?" Zekthor demanded. "My Emperor," his sensor operator said in a shaking voice, "we detect massive fleet formations throughout our home system. They appeared from nowhere." Admiral Bennett's voice echoed through every communication channel on Krillian Prime. "Emperor Zekthor, this is Admiral Bennett of the Galactic Freedom Alliance. Your empire ends today." The attack began immediately. 200 ghost ships materialized around Krillian Prime, supported by Zephyrian biovessels and Cerulean phase ships. The enemy home fleet, caught completely by surprise, scrambled to respond. Captain Brooks led the first wave against the orbital defense platforms. His mixed squadron of human and alien ships struck like lightning, destroying defensive positions that had protected Krillian Prime for millennia. Dr. Wright coordinated the cyber warfare assault from her command ship, Human. Computer viruses, enhanced with Prism Entity quantum processors, swept through Krillian networks like wildfire. In minutes, the enemy lost control of their own defensive systems. The battle for Krillian Prime was swift and decisive. The home fleet, designed to intimidate rather than fight, crumbled under the coordinated assault. Within 3 hours, rebel forces controlled the orbital space around the enemy capital. Emperor Zekthor watched his empire die from his palace windows. Explosions lit up the sky as his ships burned. In the distance, he could see rebel forces landing on the planet's surface. "My Emperor," General Crixnall said quietly, "we must surrender. The war is lost." "Never!" Zekthor roared. "I am the ruler of the galaxy. I will not bow to primitives and slaves." But his defiance was meaningless now. Rebel troops, led by human special forces and Zephyrian warriors, fought their way through the capital city. The Imperial Guard, elite. Soldiers who had never known defeat surrendered in droves when faced with enemies they could not see or predict. Admiral Bennett herself led the final assault on the Imperial Palace. Her mixed force of humans, Zephyrians, and Ceruleans moved through the massive structure like ghosts. Palace guards fired at shadows while their enemies struck from impossible angles. In the throne room, Emperor Zekthor made his last stand. The ancient ruler faced Admiral Bennett with his ceremonial sword drawn, his yellow eyes burning with 3,000 years of hatred. "You have destroyed everything," he snarled. "Without the Empire, the galaxy will fall into chaos." Bennett looked at the alien emperor with steady eyes. "Your empire challenged humanity. You assumed we were like all the others you've conquered. You were wrong." She gestured to the mixed force of species behind her. "We didn't just resist you. We taught this galaxy that freedom is worth fighting for, no matter the odds." Zekthor lunged forward with his sword, but Veltar of the Zephyrians was faster. The former slave struck down his former master with a single blow. "It is finished," Veltar said simply. News of the Emperor's death spread across the galaxy within hours. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved species rose up against their remaining Krillian overlords. The 3,000-year empire collapsed in a single day. 6 months later, representatives from 200 species gathered at the neutral station of New Harmony. Admiral Bennett, now humanity's chief ambassador, helped draft the Galactic Freedom Charter. "No species has the right to rule over another," she read from the document. "All intelligent life deserves the chance to determine its own destiny." The former empire's territories became independent worlds. The Krillians themselves, their military destroyed and their government dissolved, began the long process of learning to live as equals rather than masters. Captain Brooks, now commanding the exploration vessel UES Liberty, led mixed crews on missions to the galaxy's edge. Humans, Zephyrians, Ceruleans, and dozens of other species worked together as partners rather than masters and slaves. Dr. Wright established the Galactic Research Institute, where scientists from every species shared knowledge freely. The technologies, developed during the war, now served peaceful purposes, exploring new worlds and solving ancient problems. On Earth, President Carter addressed the species in a historic ceremony. Humanity's greatest victory was not military. It was teaching an entire galaxy that no one has the right to rule over others. The war had changed everything. The species that was once given 30 days to surrender had instead given the galaxy something far more precious than victory. They had given them hope and the knowledge that freedom was always worth fighting for. In the end, humanity had not just won a war, they had liberated a galaxy. Commander Jake Sullivan sat in his old leather chair, watching the morning sun rise over the hills of New Haven Colony. At 73 years old, his hair had turned completely gray, and his hands showed the scars of decades spent fixing equipment and building homes on this distant world. He had not seen an alien face in 50 years, and he liked it that way. The coffee maker beeped in the kitchen, pulling him from his thoughts. Jake walked slowly across the wooden floor of his cabin, his joints creaking with age. Through the window, he could see other colonists starting their day. Children ran to school while their parents headed to the farms and workshops that kept New Haven running. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. The communication device on his desk had been silent for decades. Jake had almost forgotten it existed, until it suddenly came to life with a series of urgent beeps. He stared at it in shock. The last time that machine had made a sound, he had been a young man serving aboard Earth's diplomatic missions. Jake pressed the receive button with a shaking finger. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the symbol of the Galactic Council. A voice spoke in the universal language that humans had helped create 2 centuries ago. This is Ambassador Veltar of the Korvax Republic speaking on behalf of the Galactic Council. We are transmitting this message to all human colonies and settlements. The galaxy needs your help. Please respond. Jake turned off the device and sat back in his chair. His mind raced back to the days when he had been young and full of hope for humanity's place among the stars. Those dreams seemed like a lifetime ago. He remembered Dr. Lisa Carter, the brilliant woman who had spent 10 years of her life developing cures for the Zephyrian plague. She had worked without sleep for months, testing thousands of compounds, while alien worlds died around her. When she finally found the cure, she had cried tears of joy. The Zephyrians had thanked her with a simple ceremony, and then went back to their daily lives as if nothing had happened. Jake also remembered General Paul Morrison, who had prevented 3 different wars through patient negotiation. Paul had spent years learning alien cultures and languages, finding common ground where others saw only conflict. He had saved millions of lives, but the aliens he helped had complained that his methods were too direct, too human. Then there was Commander Tony Blake, the engineer who had designed the security systems that protected the major trade routes. Tony had worked for free, sharing his designs with any species that needed them. When pirates found ways around the systems, Tony would create new ones without asking for payment. But when a crystalline merchant ship was attacked despite using Tony's systems, the Crystalline Consortium blamed him for the failure. Jake closed his eyes and remembered the worst day of his life. He had been serving as a military advisor when the Altarian Civil War began. The government forces were preparing to kill millions of civilian rebels, including women and children. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez had ordered human forces to intervene, saving countless innocent lives. But instead of gratitude, the Altarians had accused humans of interference in their internal affairs. The final insult had come at the Galactic Council meeting. Jake had been there as part of the human diplomatic team. One by one, alien ambassadors stood up to criticize humanity. They said humans were too aggressive, too willing to break rules, too unpredictable. They wanted human help, but they wanted. It delivered quietly, without any of the qualities that made humans effective in the first place. Jake remembered the look on Ambassador Rodriguez's face as she listened to hours of complaints. This woman had dedicated her life to building bridges between species, and now those same species were telling her that everything she valued about humanity was wrong. When Rodriguez finally stood to speak, her voice was calm but firm. For 200 years, humans have answered every call for help from this galaxy. We have cured your plagues, stopped your wars, protected your trade, and saved your children. And for 200 years, you have told us we are doing it wrong. Alien ambassadors had shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Rodriguez continued. You want our help, but you don't want us to be human. You want us to solve problems like you would solve them, which means they would never get solved at all. We came to the stars seeking friendship and cooperation. Instead, we found ourselves constantly criticized for the very qualities that made our help effective. Jake remembered the stunned silence that followed Rodriguez's next words. "We are done. Handle your own problems from now on." The human withdrawal had been swift and complete. Every military vessel, research station, trade, post, and diplomatic mission had been recalled to human space within 6 months. The borders were sealed with the most advanced technology humanity possessed. No alien ship could enter human territory, and no human ship would leave it. Jake had been assigned to help establish the border defenses before retiring to New Haven. He had watched the last human ships leave alien space and felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the friendships that had been broken. Relief that humanity would finally be free to grow without constant criticism. The years that followed had been the best of Jake's life. Without the constant demands of galactic crises, humans had turned their energy inward. New Haven had grown from a small outpost to a thriving community of 50,000 people. Children could grow up without fear of alien wars or plagues. Families could plan for the future without wondering if their loved ones would be called away to solve someone else's problems. Human technology had advanced by decades in the 50 years of isolation. Without the need to maintain compatibility with alien systems, human engineers had created innovations that would have been impossible before. Medical science had conquered diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Art and literature had flourished as people had time to create beauty instead of just solving problems. Jake walked to his bookshelf and pulled out a photo album. The pictures showed New Haven's growth over the years. There was the day they opened, the new school, built with human hands using human designs. There was the Harvest Festival where children played games their grandparents had brought from Earth. There was his own wedding day, when he had married Sarah, a teacher who had been born on New Haven and had never seen an alien face. But even as Jake appreciated the life humanity had built, he sometimes wondered what had happened to the galaxy they had left behind. The communication device provided no answers. Human space was surrounded by a wall of silence that no information could penetrate. Sometimes Jake dreamed about the alien children he had seen in the refugee camps during the synthetic wars. He remembered, their large eyes looking up at him with trust and hope. Human medics had worked around the clock to keep them alive while their parents fought in the distant battle lines. Those children would be adults now, if they had survived. The communication device beeped again, interrupting his thoughts. Jake looked at it for a long moment before walking over and pressing the button. "This is Ambassador Veltar. Our situation grows worse by the day. The Zephyrian plague has returned, stronger than before. We cannot create the cure without human knowledge. Wars rage across 17 sectors. We have lost the ability to maintain peace without human mediators. Please, if any humans receive this message, the galaxy needs your help." Jake turned off the device again and sat in silence. 50 years ago, he would have been running to the spaceport, ready to answer that call, but 50 years ago, he had been young and naive. Now he was old and tired, and he had seen what gratitude looked like in the galaxy. Outside his window, the sun climbed higher over New Haven's peaceful hills. Children's laughter carried on the morning breeze. Jake picked up his coffee cup and took a long sip. The galaxy had made its choice 50 years ago. Now it would have to live with the consequences. Worlds were suffering because the people who could help them had chosen to. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of the border station watching her screens fill with red warning lights. After 40 years of quiet service protecting humanity's frontier, she had never seen so many alien ships moving at once. The deep space sensors showed massive fleets gathering just beyond human territory, and none of them were flying in formation together. Kate had served on border defense for most of her career, starting as a young lieutenant when the barriers first went up. Back then, the occasional alien scout would test the boundaries, trying to find a way through human defenses. Those ships had always turned back when they realized the barriers could not be crossed. Now, something different was happening. Lieutenant. Steve Adams hurried across the bridge carrying a data tablet. Steve was barely 30 years old and had never seen an alien ship before today. Born after the withdrawal, he represented a generation of humans who knew about the galaxy beyond their borders only through history books and old recordings. Admiral, we're tracking at least 200 ships in the Zephyrian fleet and maybe 300 in the crystalline formation, Steve reported. They're not moving toward each other anymore. Both fleets have changed course and they're heading straight for our territory. Kate studied the tactical display. The two fleets had been fighting each other for months, their war spreading across 17 star systems. Human intelligence reports suggested that billions of civilians had already died in the conflict. Now, instead of continuing their battle, both sides were coming to human space. Any communication attempts? Kate asked. Yes, Admiral. Both fleets are broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. They're requesting permission to enter human territory for emergency talks. Kate almost smiled at the irony. 40 years ago, those same species had voted to condemn human methods as too aggressive and unpredictable. Now, they wanted human help to end their war. The communication board lit up with an incoming transmission. Kate nodded to her communications officer, who put the message on the main screen. The face that appeared belonged to Admiral Korseth of the Zephyrian Republic, an alien Kate recognized from old intelligence files. Human defenders, this is Admiral Korseth. I am requesting immediate permission to meet with human authorities. The war between our people and the Crystalline Consortium has reached a point where both sides face complete destruction. We need human mediators to help us find a solution. Please respond. Kate considered her options. Standing orders from Earth were clear. No alien ships were allowed past the barriers under any circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. Two major galactic powers were asking for help, and their war was causing massive suffering throughout the galaxy. Before Kate could respond, another transmission came through. This time the speaker was Commander Nexus of the Crystalline Consortium, his crystalline features reflecting the lights of his ship's bridge. Human Border Station, this is Commander Nexus. Our intelligence reports that the Zephyrians have already contacted you. We wish to make it clear that the Crystalline Consortium also requests human mediation. We are prepared to agree to any terms that will bring this war to an end. Too many have died already. Kate muted both transmissions and turned to her senior staff. Opinions? Commander Dan Foster, her second-in-command, spoke first. Admiral, our orders are clear. No alien contact means no alien contact. If we let them through, we're opening a door that's been closed for 40 years. But Lieutenant Adams disagreed. Sir, with respect, look at the casualty reports we've been monitoring. Entire worlds have been destroyed. If we can help stop this war, shouldn't we try? Kate understood both positions. Dan represented the older generation that remembered the bitter feelings of the withdrawal. Steve represented the younger generation that had grown up hearing stories about the good that humans had once done in the galaxy. What's Earth's position on this? Kate asked. Communications Officer Linda Shaw checked her console. No official word yet, Admiral. We sent the situation report an hour ago, but Earth Command hasn't responded. Kate knew that Earth was probably having the same debate that was happening on her bridge. President Carol Martinez led a government that had been elected on a platform of continued isolation. But even the most dedicated isolationists had to consider the moral implications of refusing to help end a war. The sensor operator called out from his station. Admiral, I'm detecting more ships approaching. These aren't military vessels. They look like civilian transports. Kate looked at the new contacts on her screen. Dozens of small ships were limping toward human space, many of them showing signs of battle damage. As they got closer, Kate could see that some were barely holding together. They're broadcasting distress signals, Linda reported. Refugee ships carrying civilians fleeing the war zones. Some report critical life support failures. Kate felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Military fleets asking for mediation was one thing, but dying civilians was another matter entirely. Even the strictest interpretation of human isolation policy had never required them to watch innocent people die when they could help. "Open a channel to the refugee ships," Kate ordered. The main screen filled with a crowd of alien faces, men, women, and children from a dozen different species. They looked exhausted and frightened, their clothes dirty and their eyes filled with desperate hope. A Zephyrian female spoke for the group. "Human Station. We are refugees from the Battle of Kepler 7. Our world was destroyed 3 days ago. We have families with young children aboard these ships. Our life support systems are failing and we have no food or medicine left. Please, if you have any mercy, help us." Kate looked around her bridge and saw the same expression on every human face. The struggle between duty and compassion that had always defined their species. These were the moments that had made humans both loved and feared throughout the galaxy. Other species might debate policy while people died, but humans acted to save lives first and worried about consequences later. "Bring the refugee ships inside." "The barrier," Kate ordered. "Emergency protocols only. Medical aid and supplies, then they go back out." Dan Foster stepped closer to Kate. "Admiral, this is a violation of standing orders. Earth Command will have our heads for this." "Then let them have our heads," Kate replied. "I won't watch children die when we can save them." The refugee ships passed through the barrier one by one, their passengers crying with relief as human. Medical teams boarded to provide aid. Kate watched the rescue operations and remembered why humanity had first gone to the stars. Not to build an empire or gain power, but to help those who needed help. But even as human doctors worked to save alien lives, Kate knew this was just the beginning. Word would spread throughout the galaxy that humans had opened their borders, even briefly. Every refugee ship, every damaged vessel, every group of survivors would head for human space, hoping for sanctuary. Dr. Helen Wright arrived on the station's next supply ship, having volunteered to help with the refugee medical crisis. Helen had been one of the galaxy's leading xenobiologists before the withdrawal, and she still remembered how to treat alien injuries and diseases. "It's worse than we thought," Helen told Kate after examining the refugees. "The new strain of Zephyrian plague is spreading through the refugee population. Without human medical knowledge, it will kill every infected alien within weeks." Kate studied the medical reports. The plague samples Helen had collected showed mutations that made the old human cure useless. Developing a new treatment would require extensive research and testing, work that could only be done in human laboratories with human expertise. "How long to develop a new cure?" Kate asked. "If we had full access to human research facilities and unlimited resources, maybe 6 months. But Admiral, this isn't just about refugees anymore. The plague is spreading to both military fleets. If it reaches the homeworlds of either species, we're talking about billions of deaths." Kate realized that the galaxy's problems were now literally inside human space. The refugees they had rescued were carrying diseases that could destroy entire civilizations. Humanity could send them back outside the barrier to die, or they could take responsibility for finding a solution. The communication board chimed with an incoming message from Earth. President Martinez appeared on the screen, her expression serious but not angry. "Admiral Thompson, we've reviewed your decision to assist the refugee ships. While you exceeded your authority, we understand the humanitarian concerns that motivated your actions. However, this situation has grown beyond what a single border station can handle." Kate waited for the order to send the refugees away, but it didn't come. "We're sending Dr. Ben Rogers to your station," the president continued. "He has authorization to begin preliminary negotiations with the alien fleets. No commitments will be made, but we will listen to what they have to say." Kate felt a mixture of relief and concern. Dr. Rogers had been Earth's former ambassador. to the Mentari Collective and one of the few humans who still understood alien politics. His arrival meant that Earth was at least considering a return to galactic affairs. But Kate also knew that once humanity started helping again, it would be almost impossible to stop. The galaxy's problems were too big and too... President Carol Martinez stood in the Situation Room beneath the Earth Capitol building, staring at the largest tactical display she had ever seen. Red dots representing over 1,000 alien ships filled the screen, all positioned just outside human territory. For the first time in 40 years, the entire galaxy was knocking on humanity's door. Carol had been elected on a platform of continued isolation, promising voters that Earth would never again sacrifice human lives and resources for ungrateful aliens. Now she faced a decision that would determine not only humanity's future, but the survival of galactic civilization itself. Secretary of Defense Nina Bell entered the room carrying the latest intelligence reports. Madam President, we've confirmed the composition of the alien fleet. Every major species is represented, including several that have never worked together before. They're not coming to make demands this time. Carol took the reports and read, "Through the ship manifests. The Zephyrian Republic had sent their entire diplomatic corps. The Crystalline Consortium had brought their best military commanders. Even the proud Korvaxi had swallowed their honor and sent representatives to beg for human help." "What about our own people?" Carol asked. "How are the colonies responding to this?" Nina checked her tablet. "Mixed reactions, Madam President. The older generation remembers the bitter feelings from the withdrawal and wants to maintain isolation. But the younger colonists are pushing for humanitarian intervention. There have been protests on 12 different worlds, with people demanding that we help the alien refugees." Carol understood the division. She belonged to the older generation that remembered the years of thankless service and constant criticism. But she also had grandchildren who had grown up hearing stories about the good that humans had once done among the stars. Lieutenant Mary Evans, the youngest member of the presidential staff, approached with a communication tablet. Mary represented the new generation of humans who had been born after the withdrawal. She had studied galactic history and had always wondered what it would be like to work alongside alien species. "Madam President, we're receiving a formal transmission from the alien fleet. They're requesting permission to present a treaty proposal to the human government." Carol almost laughed at the word treaty. 40 years ago, the aliens had told humanity to leave and never come back. Now they were offering formal agreements and legal protections in exchange for help. "Put the transmission on the main screen," Carol ordered. The display showed Ambassador Veltar of the Korvax Republic, the same alien who had once led the campaign to exclude humans from galactic affairs. Veltar looked older and more tired than in the historical records, his proud bearing replaced by obvious desperation. "President Martinez of Earth, I am Ambassador Veltar speaking on behalf of the United Species of the Galaxy. We come before you today not as your equals, but as supplicants seeking your mercy and aid." Carol noticed that Veltar used the word supplicants deliberately. In Korvaxi culture, that term carried deep meaning. It acknowledged complete dependence on another's goodwill. 40 years ago, we made a terrible mistake," Veltar continued. "We told you that your methods were wrong, that your approaches were too aggressive, too unpredictable. We asked you to leave our affairs and handle our own problems. We have learned that we cannot." The display switched to show images from across the galaxy. Burning worlds, refugee camps, hospital ships full of plague victims, and empty space where colonies had once thrived. The scale of destruction was beyond anything Carol had imagined. The weaponized plague now threatens every inhabited world in the galaxy. Our combined medical knowledge cannot produce a cure. Our diplomatic efforts cannot end the wars that spread the disease. Our military forces cannot protect civilian populations from biological weapons. We need human knowledge, human medicine, and human leadership. Veltar's image returned to the screen. We offer you this treaty not as an agreement between equals, but as a recognition of human superiority in the arts of healing, diplomacy, and protection. We ask for your help not because we deserve it, but because without it, galactic civilization will end." The transmission ended, and the Situation Room fell silent. Carol had expected demands or conditions, but instead the galaxy was offering unconditional surrender to human authority. Dr. Frank Turner, Earth's leading medical researcher, entered the room carrying files on the plague analysis. "Madam President, we've completed our initial study of the biological weapon. The good news is that we can develop a cure. The bad news is that it will require massive resources and coordination across multiple star systems." Carol studied the medical reports. The cure would require ingredients found on dozens of different worlds, manufacturing facilities that could produce billions of doses, and distribution networks that spanned the entire galaxy. It was exactly the kind of complex multi-species project that humans had once specialized in managing. "How long to implement a full cure program?" Carol asked. "If we had complete cooperation from all galactic governments and unlimited access to their resources?" 18 months to cure everyone who's currently infected and establish prevention protocols. But, Madam President, this isn't just about medicine. The plague is spreading because of ongoing wars and refugee movements. We'd need to stop the fighting and establish stable governments before any medical program could work. Carol realized that curing the plague would require humanity to take on all of their old roles at once: doctors, diplomats, peacekeepers, and administrators. The galaxy wasn't just asking for help with one crisis. They were asking humans to rebuild galactic civilization from the ground up. Captain Linda Shaw, who had been monitoring communications from the alien fleet, approached with urgent news. "Madam President, we're receiving priority transmissions from Sanctuary Medical. The children's ward is reporting multiple deaths in the last 6 hours. They're asking if Dr. Rogers' promise of help was real." Carol closed her eyes and thought about the children dying in that hospital ward. Some of them had been born after the human withdrawal and had never met a human before. They were suffering because of decisions made by previous generations, both human and alien. The door to the Situation Room opened and Commander Jake Sullivan entered, still wearing his colonial work clothes. Carol had ordered him brought from New Haven because she needed the perspective of someone who had lived through both the original cooperation and the bitter withdrawal. "Jake, you were there at the beginning and at the end. What's your assessment of this situation?" Jake looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet, then at the medical reports, then at the images of dying children. "Madam President, 40 years ago we walked away because they took our help for granted and criticized our methods. Now they're offering us complete authority and acknowledging that their methods don't work." Jake paused and looked directly at Carol. "The question isn't whether we can help them. We obviously can. The question is whether we're willing to take responsibility for an entire galaxy again, knowing that it means the end of our peaceful isolation." Carol understood the weight of the decision. If humanity returned to galactic affairs, they would be giving up the paradise they had built for themselves. Human colonies would once again send their best people to dangerous assignments on alien worlds. Human families would once again worry about loved ones dying in foreign wars and alien plagues. But if humanity refused, they would be condemning billions of innocent beings to death from a weaponized plague. They would be watching the collapse of a civilization they had once helped build. Lieutenant Mary Evans spoke up from across the room. "Madam President, permission to speak freely?" Carol nodded. "My generation grew up hearing stories about the time when humans saved worlds and stopped wars. We've always wondered if we would be brave enough to do what our grandparents did. Now we have the chance to find out." Mary's words seemed to crystallize something in Carol's mind. She looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. Some old enough to remember the withdrawal, others young enough to dream of return. Open a channel to the alien fleet, Carol ordered. The communication system activated, and Carol found herself face to face with representatives from every major species in the galaxy. They looked at her with expressions of desperate hope mixed with shame at having to ask for help from the people they had once rejected. Ambassador Veltar and representatives of the galactic species, this is President Martinez of Earth. We have reviewed your treaty proposal and your request for assistance. Carol paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. Humanity accepts your treaty with the following understanding. We will help you end your wars, cure your plague, and rebuild your civilization. But we will do it using human methods, human leadership and human authority. If you ever again question our approaches or take our help for granted, we will not hesitate to withdraw a second time. The alien representatives broke into expressions of relief and gratitude. Some were openly weeping. Others were bowing in their seats. However, Carol continued, we return not as your servants, but as your partners. This galaxy belongs to all of us, and we will build something better than what existed before. Carol ended the transmission and turned to her staff. Dr. Turner, begin immediate preparations for the medical response. Jake, I want you to head the ANI.